You don't have to, like, no, but like, you don't necessarily have to
Show you support the system.
if it's, yeah. If you can abstain. If you can abstain.
A ruthless lion is hunting a gazelle in the savannah. It's chasing it, it's running, the gazelle is running, the lion is catching up. Suddenly, a lion policeman shows up and says, "No, sorry, you're not allowed to eat the gazelle. That gazelle has rights. You're infringing on the gazelle's rights, and so I'm not going to allow you to exercise your rights as a lion because those impinge on the rights of that gazelle and their gazellian rights." Ladies and gentlemen, that is not how the real world works. We do not simply have a system which says that animals on animals is a bad thing. We do not say, and we do not assume that we do not say that humans actually we do not say that animals have the same rights as humans fundamentally. And we say the sheer concept of imposing our beliefs when it comes to things like rape and molestation on animals is simply non-existence. We question the assertion that having sex with an animal will cause it pain. But even if it did cause the animal pain, we in our society overwhelmingly accept that causing animals pain for the benefit of humans is a good thing. Hence why 40% of New Zealand's GDP is based on the slaughter of animals for the production of meats. Ladies and gentlemen, on side after this tonight, we're going to argue three things. We're going to argue, firstly, animals are intrinsically property, and that animals, as they are property, humans should be able to use their property as they see fit. Second, we're going to talk about how animal rights simply don't exist, but even if they did exist, we wouldn't necessarily be infringing on them. And thirdly, we're going to talk about how the state does not generally get into what happens in the bedroom. We do not believe that it is the role of state to set rules about what is and isn't acceptable when it comes to sexual relations. My second speaker, Paul, will be talking about how using animals as a sexual outlet will have huge benefits on society. Will have huge benefits on society, and we will actually see humans being much better off as a result, which is all that we believe on Side AF, is that we are for humans by humans. So firstly, I'd like to tackle this idea of animals are in fact property. We accept that animals can be bought, sold, killed, made to reproduce, etc., etc. Animals, fundamentally, in the 21st century, are the property of humans. Whether it's the sheep in the field or the dog that's sitting on the end of your rug, they are property. And we accept that with personal property, you are able to do almost anything that you like with the personal property that you own.
Feel dirty.
Operative word there.
Well, we believe that you're actually able, like if I go and buy a PlayStation 3 from the store, I can smash that on the ground as much as I want because it is my intrinsic property. Because I own it, I am able to do what I want with it. Because animals in this century are seen as property, it is not fair for us to simply say what is and isn't acceptable for me to do with your property. Similar to the way that I say that you shouldn't be allowed any Kanye West on your iPod because it's derogatory to a woman, you shouldn't be allowed to say you're not allowed to have sex with your cow because it's somehow wrong or somehow bad to a sector of society. So moving on to my second point about animal rights. We fundamentally believe on Side AF that animals do not have any rights. We think that the gazelle in the field does not have any rights when being stalked by the lion, so why should the gazelle have any rights when being stalked by man? We already see overwhelming horrible use of words. We already see fundamentally that we are able to actually use animals for pleasure, in terms of that I'm allowed to go down to Fish and Game, buy a firearms license, go up into the hills, and I'm allowed to shoot as many animals as I like for my own personal enjoyment. I might get pleasure out of shooting an animal, simply maybe because I'm a sadist, maybe because I'm a masochist, whatever. But if we already accept that that is fundamentally okay in our society. So if I'm able to go and kill an animal, as in end its life permanently, or even if I'm able to go and shoot it and cause it suffering, why shouldn't I be able to actually use that animal as a sexual release? We're already causing the same amount of pain, and at the end of the day, if I'm having sex with an animal, I may not want to kill it at the end of the day, so the animal may be net better off at the end of the day. we already accept, as I said, things like meat, but we also look at things like animal testing. And that we think that if a new drug is coming to the market, why are we going to test it on humans when it may have horrible side effects? We can test it on monkeys for the benefit of humans. We use animals for the advancement of humans fundamentally. And if Cite and Egg want to dispute that, that's fine, but they're going to dispute against the 80% of New Zealanders who eat meat, and the huge billions of people worldwide who rely on meat to actually to survive. And when it comes down to that, oh god, no. Yeah, so the third point I'm just going to move on to quickly is about sexual rules. And that when it comes to the end of the day, if I'm into whips, if I'm into bondage, if I'm into doing whatever I want to do, I'm able to do whatever I want to do in the bedroom. The state does not get involved in saying what is and isn't okay in my bedroom. Okay? There is a... So when it comes down to that, why should the state, if the state can't say that I'm not allowed to wear bondage and whip my partner, why should the state be able to say I'm not allowed to have sex with my dog? On the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we fundamentally believe on Side Act that animals are property and should be treated as such. Animals do not have this intrinsic right to rights, and at the end of the day, the government should not be interfering on what people do in the privacy of their own homes. Ladies and gentlemen, bestiality should be allowed.
Right, first speaker, Nick.
We're 5 to 6, aren't we?
Yeah, 5 to
Yeah.
6.
That was a good start.
You ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard this bizarre argument today that animals have no rights, and we have to come. I mean, this started off with this whole lion gazelle thing, and that if animals have, you know, where they have rights and have rights, then laws and rules have to be enforced on them. First of all, what we say to this is these creatures that are running around jeopardise their rights, the freedom that they have not to be involved with humans. When animals are out in the wild, we can't enforce these rules on them. The idea that the dog at the end of the rug or the animals that we have around us have no rights is ludicrous. We have we have rules and laws that say that you're not allowed to torture animals. That when you're the farm animals that we slaughter have to be killed in a way that limits the amount of suffering. Whether or not this happens is questionable, but that's generally what we're taught to believe. And the idea is that, you know, we have when a hunter goes out hunting and shoots an animal, it's generally considered a better kill. They're more proud of it if they cause the animal the least amount of suffering. So the idea that we would legalise something that is essentially torture or rape for an animal is bizarre. We're doing something which is an effective violation of its rights, and and is essentially you're taking delight in raping this creature. So I'm going to cover 3 points to start with. I'm going to cover the animal rights and why this is morally wrong and awful to the animal, and then we're going to look at why it's going to be a serious issue to humans, both in the moral effects on humanity and also the possible health side effects. So first of all, you know, the reason we protect children and the elderly and we give them rights and we stop these things from happening and the mentally ill is because they're vulnerable to the effects other people have, to other people in society. It's the exact same. They're not able to protect themselves, and that's the exact same with our pets that we have, the dog, the cat, your goldfish. You know, you're not allowed to torture them or have sex with them, or you know, or just leave them on the side of the street because they require protection, because they're protected by our society. And you know, in the same way that you wouldn't be, you know, that you're not allowed to have sex with a mentally ill person, because they're unable to give consent to it properly. If that person, you know, is in a state of mind where they don't know what they're doing, you know, it's our bodily rights, and these rights are the same for animals. So you know, you're not allowed just to go off and have sex with them. And essentially, what you're doing when you do this is you're legalising a form of rape. That's what it is. You would be, in the same way that you would be raping a mentally ill person because they don't know what's going on, they don't understand. In the same with a child, you're essentially doing this to an animal. This creature is unable to protect itself and doesn't have ways of protecting itself, and it requires to be protected by law. In the same way that we're not allowed to torture animals. I explained at the start. When a hunter goes out, they're not allowed to maim a deer so it can't move, cover it in gasoline, and light it on fire. It's morally wrong, it's sick, and we wouldn't agree with it. So I'm going to move on to my second point now, but the health effects and more of the self violation and the mental issues with humanity. Nobody who, no rapist who, when this is legalised, is going to go out and stop raping people and decide that they're just going to go and have sex with animals instead. It's not going to be some way we can give people in our society a different way of, freeing themselves of sexual desire. But somebody who does go off and rape an animal and enjoys the pain and suffering that creature is going to be put through, is probably quite likely to move up steadily to a human. So essentially what you're going to do is increase issues, and then it's going to have this moral effect on society, where essentially we've legalised a form of rape now, and what's going to come after that? Are you going to be allowed to have, if you're allowed to have sex with an animal, it's just, that person's now going to be considered okay to have sex with a mentally ill person who's no more than a vegetable. It's the difference between a vegetable and an animal, essentially. So now my final point, which is going to look at the health effects. AIDS essentially came, or one of the things we believe this came from, is apes. And it was either people eating them, or as Ricky Gervais says, having sex with them. One or the other. We don't know what the side effects can be. And if you're legalising a form of rape, you're not going to force people to wear condoms. There's no way of, forcing people to do this. There's no way of monitoring it. And we don't know what it can cause to human society. We've seen what AIDS can do. It's done to Africa, and what it's, as it continues to, and affects a large proportion of the world's population. So just to recap on my points. One, animals do have rights. And we don't, and I've explained why we don't have a right to violate them. These creatures are unable to be protected when they're in our homes. Those animals that are out in the bush, hunting other animals, they jeopardise those rights for freedom. And essentially, so that's what it comes down to. You've got domesticated animals that require our rights, and we don't torture them. There's no reason why it should be legalised through bestiality. My second point, the effects it's going to have on human morality. And how far this is going to go, and how much rape we're going to legalise, and then finally, obviously, the health effects, and that's why the move mustn't stand.
Are we doing replies?
Yeah.
We are? Okay.
And recalls. Oh! Remember that we're not soundproof.
Did somebody come up behind me?
Actually,
Oh no, it's just he gets funny enthusiastic.
but actually, why did you say that? Because what people next door are going to be hearing is someone talking about why we should be allowed to sing animals really loudly. Come over and see this guy go, no!
Can we please not put this on YouTube?
No, we have to.
You have a last tour on YouTube.
Yeah.
You want it out? Don't worry, I think it's
We'll just put your name in it so it comes at the top of Google searches.
I was crunching like
Give me a second. There wasn't no weird.
I don't think you expanded enough about how the joys of this
It's my favourite weekend activity.
Pleasure it can bring to a lonely soul.
That's a nice argument.
Are we ready?
We just can't
Yeah.
get human partners things.
We could ban
Go.
prostitution with Legalise Beastiality.
Ollie is not very aware of how animals mate, right? Animals mate by the simple logic that they see someone of their opposite gender and then they go and have sex with someone. There is not the same element of discerning and deciding which partner you are going to have with. This whole assertion which underpinned Ollie's speech was that we are raping animals. Animals have no concept of rape. That is a total human imposition of their idea on to animals, right? We say that is totally wrong, and we say, in addition, right, we say that given an animal, while it cannot consent, it also can't give its consent. We say, given we have a already predisposition bias to say that animals are our property, we say that it falls on the line of them giving their consent. I've got two questions. The first thing I'm going to ask is, do animals have rights, and should they have rights? And then secondly, I'm going to look at the benefits to the human population of our policy. So on to the first question of, are animals our property? Tom pointed to you clear examples of how we say it is perfectly acceptable to cause harm to animals when there is a benefit to human. He pointed you to the example of things like animal testing, the fact we eat them as meat, and the fact we have them as pets. We say, if you are able to hold an animal to allow it to be a pet, simply so you can look at it and say, there's a cute animal, the logical extension, in fact, it's not even an extension, right? It's a backward thing, because we would say being able to have sex or release physically is more valuable to a human being than able to say, look, I've got a cute cat, right? So we say it's perfectly rational under our current system to say that. Well, the point is, right, like most people, if they had a choice between having sex or having a pet,
or owning something,
would pick having a pet. In addition, right, we say that animals don't have rights. We say there are good reasons for that. We say their only analysis was the typical Peter Singer, oh, they've like got a capacity to suffer harm. Oh, look, we win, they should all have rights. We say that totally does not give a nuanced analysis as to why humans allocate rights. Humans allocate rights for self-interested reasons, to continue their own species, right? We say that's exactly why it's okay to have sex with a dog, but not have sex with someone who is mentally ill, right? Because we say when you have sex with someone who is mentally ill, that causes a massive harm to them, but also the other people who live around them in their communities, right? There's a harm to the human. So we say it's a self-interested reason why you protect that. Well, I'll explain the logic again. If you have sex with an animal, no one human gets harmed. If you have sex with a mentally ill person, that mentally ill person is a human gets harmed, and other humans surrounding them in their circle of influence get harmed. Hopefully that's clear now. So we're happy on this side to take a specious line. We say we already do. And I'm just going to reinforce that first point I made, because I didn't think I made it that well. But the point is, right, is that if you're happy, and you're happy for the law to keep animals captive inside your house for the purpose of having, you know, some company, we say that having a sex is actually a much more valuable outlet for humans, as I'm going to move on to and tell you in my substantive point. So what is my substantive point? My substantive point is about how this provides a good alternative outlet, because there are a whole range of studies which show that the ability to, I'm not going to mince my words here, ejaculate or get sexual stimulation is really beneficial to one's psychological well-being. Right? The reason for that is that it's not that difficult to understand, is that when you get sexual stimulation, you stimulate a chemical in your brain and you get a chemical rush, and as a result of that you experience happy feelings. You know, it's like after you've done exercise, but 100 times better. The point here is that there are a lot of people who do not have access to a sexual partner. That could be for a whole range of reasons. They may not be able to attract one, or they just may not, you know, be living in an area where there's a suitable thing, or the partner who they're with may not be able to reciprocate effectively. Why? Okay, well here is exactly why. We say there are alternatives like porn, right? But we say that when you use something physical, that always replicates the simulation of sex better than when you're sitting in front of a computer screen. We say there is the option of prostitutes, but we say there are a lot of reasons why you may not want to sleep with a prostitute, like the fact the embarrassment of having to do it, and in addition, well, it's true, right? Like, there are a whole lot of people who wouldn't sleep with a prostitute, like, you know, Kurt wouldn't because he's conservative and he opposed prostitution. And so we say it is perfectly legitimate for them to use their animal. Why is that? Because there's less chance of anyone else finding out that you've used your animal, because your animal is not going to be like meow, meow. So we say on this side of the house that animals do not have rights. We say humans can use them for their own end. We say we already use them for lesser ends than sex. We're proud to propose.
Hang on, I'm just putting down this point.
I like the quote, referring to bestiality. It's like you've just done exercise, but 100 times better.
I personally like the idea that it is embarrassing to sleep with a prostitute, but not with your cat.
Alec, remember.
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm not sure exactly what kind of animals have been approaching Paul lately, but he would perhaps notice that although animals may automatically have sex with other animals of the same species and of the opposite gender, that's actually a very refined form of decision that animal makes. They don't approach humans and attempt to have sex with humans. Animals have a very particular form of sex that they have, and that can easily be seen as a form of consent to sex when they choose to have it with another member of this opposite sex of the same species. Additionally, I don't think it's very logical, Paul, for you to get up here and say that it's more valuable to humans for them to have sex than for them to own property. That's just not true, because you're treating animals exactly the same as property, therefore that's all their value you're talking about. You'd like to say something like a cute kitten, but actually the value of animals extends far beyond that, and of course you're treating them just like property, so people can, it's the very value of having property in the first place. But that's not the major point that I'm going to talk to you about in this debate. I'm firstly going to talk to you about why animals do have rights, why we do disagree with the people that eat animals, why we do disagree with the people that own animals as pets, and why we think that that's very important and why Peter Singer is basically right. But secondly, I'm going to continue to talk to you exactly about why, even beyond that, even if animals are property, why we do have rules around how we treat our property, and thirdly, even if that's the case, the effects that this is going to have on humans. But firstly, I'm going to absolutely abolish this ridiculous idea that this is somehow going to be a really big benefit as a sexual outlet. First of all, there are going to be very, very few people realistically having sex with animals, Paul. This isn't going to create a whole lot of joy in the world if people are allowed to do it. In fact, the disgust and horror at the idea of cute kittens being raped is probably going to actually outweigh, in terms of values, how this actually benefits people. We say that it's very, very easy for people to masturbate. We think that people can do that much easier than animals. And we say if you want something physical, Paul, a sex toy is cheaper than an animal. That's going to be of a far greater value. You actually have to have the kind of mind that wants to have sex with animals. It's not just like, I want to have sex, I want to have an animal. You have to want to have sex with animals to do this. So why do animals have rights? Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the values that humans hold. Paul made this bizarre point that humans treat values on create rights on the basis that it extends the value of their species or something. Firstly, that's completely wrong. We treat all humans with rights regardless of whether or not we're going to extend our species by doing that. But secondly, Paul, we say that if a mentally ill person, and if there was a mentally ill person, you were the only one who knew about them, they existed in a house and had no friends, which is quite probable because mentally ill people are often alone and often don't have a wide social circle, and intellectually disabled people are even more in this category, the ones that can basically only experience suffering, and that's why we treat them with rights. We say that that person still has rights. That person still has rights because we know that they can suffer as much as another human being, because they can suffer on a visceral level that is an extremely high level of suffering and causes them harm, Paul. We say that regardless of what it's going to do to their extended social circle, they still have rights. Humans still accept that they have rights, and we say that that's why we extend it to animals as well, because they can experience that same form of visceral pain, in fact in some cases even more. In cases like bonobos, which are very similar to humans and can actually learn words and so on, which is more than a very young child can do, and which is more than an intellectually disabled person may be able to do. We say that they can easily have those rights. We say that any animal that can suffer to that extent, which basically means they have a central nervous system, and it covers all animals that can viably have sex with, means that they can have those same rights as well. So yes, Paul, we do oppose the eating of meat. We do oppose owning animals as pets. We think that they actually deserve that kind of individual bodily right. That means you can't commit violence upon them. And Paul, bestiality is a form of violence. If you get up there, if you rape an animal and get its body and penetrate it with your pen, which is basically what bestiality is going to be in the real world, right? Like that is a form of violence upon the animal's body. We say that it should be illegal on the basis that animals should not have violence caused upon them. We say that the example of nature brought up by Tom right at the start isn't a very good way of looking at it, because we say the reason we're going to do this is to try and minimise the suffering of animals. We say that if you leave animals within nature, within their own freedom to be able to experience within their own environment that they're adapted to be within, basically there's going to be a net benefit to animals if you let them be free to do that than if you put up barriers and have lion police and gazelle police and so on. There's actually going to be a net benefit to leaving them free within that wild area, because that's where they're naturally supposed to be, that's where they're able to be liberated, and that's the way that they are meant to exist. There's going to be that net benefit that occurs. So that's why we can extend these rights to animals. We say that they can suffer, they can have that form of violence. Okay. I'm going to now reiterate some of these other points. We say that, firstly, we actually do limit, even if animals do, now it comes to the even if arguments, which don't apply because their analysis of animal rights isn't very good in this debate. We say that we actually limit what people can do with certain things because of the damage that it can do to themselves and to other human beings. We say that actually, Paul, if the reason why we don't allow people to have sex with intellectually disabled people is because it causes damage to a wider social circle, we actually say that you can actually have that same harm when you do it with animals. We don't allow people, but in addition, we say that actually there's an incredible a factor of like, if you allow psychopathic behaviour, which is what it is if someone is torturing and having sex and raping an animal, if you legitimise psychopathic behaviour with a complete lack of empathy for a creature that can suffer, we say that actually, we totally disagree with that on the first hand. We say that you shouldn't accept humans being able to be psychopathic. We think that that's a terrible, terrible thing. We would not allow it in our society because psychopathic behaviour is wrong, and it shouldn't in any way be allowed or encouraged. But secondly, you can actually see that extending in terms of behaviour to other human beings, because the joy being taken here is it necessarily involves the thing not consenting and the thing having a violence committed to it. We say there's not an outlet. We say that it legitimises a form of violent behaviour and lack of empathetic behaviour, which is going to have poor societal outcomes in terms of how humans treat one another, like with a lack of empathy, with a lack of violence. And just to reiterate, we have no idea of the potential health dangers to humans here. Obviously, they're not going to force people to wear condoms when they have sex with animals. We think this can easily cause enormous health problems on that kind of thing, and also within the animal population, which is an extremely important thing, because obviously they still value animals because they think people can have sex with them and enjoy it wonderfully. So we think that if you're going to cause harm in terms of both psychologically, in terms of whether or not the fact, if you allow animals to be raped, that can actually have a psychological impact, that it turns them off having sex with their own species, right? It can also have massive effects in terms of them getting like AIDS themselves, right? That can spread into animal populations, and we think that if that continues to happen, you actually see a downfall in animal populations, which is a terrible, terrible thing as well. So for all of these reasons, we're absolutely opposed to the legalisation of bestiality.
You really love your bonobos, don't you, Alec? You love those monkeys. You feel passionately about those monkeys. The last 6 debates I've seen you in, you have mentioned the bonobos in some way.
It's probably because half of them have been animal rights debates.
Even when they're not animal rights debates, the bonobos come.
Would you say that you have a passionate connection to bonobos?
I have a platonic connection to bonobos. Which can be passionate in the same way that I have a passion for the brozone.
But it's not romantic.
Yeah.
So it's this customary.
I have a passion for debate. Doesn't mean I want to have sex with it.
What's the idea of the brozone?
Make love to the idea.
So yeah, first need.
It's just called masturbation, actually.
Hey, you guys did create this group while we were sleeping on about 3 mattresses between 6 of you.
Actually, the original
3 layers, bro.
is even more gay than that. The bro showers, we'll discuss this a little later.
So yeah.
Anyway, moving on. As is customary at this point in the debate, we'll invite up. Yeah, but no one listened. Yeah. We'll invite up the leader of the negative team. Yeah, negative team.
Oh, is it me first?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I forgot about
to
that.
give his leader's advice.
Yeah.
I just noticed Tom sitting there scribbling, going, "Oh, this isn't really fair, is it?" I was giving huge amounts of time, and I wasn't fair.
I wasn't thinking properly.
You're allowed to talk.
Yeah, no, I'm just stuck on time. Alright, so just to go over the points we've made here on the negative side. Firstly, we've got animal rights and why we give animals rights and how this compares to human rights and why we don't just give human rights to promote our own species. And then we've also got the issues of the how this is the effects it's going to have on society and the moral effects on humanity, and then the health effects. Okay, so again, first of all, reasons we give animals rights. It's the same reason we give small children the elderly rights, as to give them some level of protection. It's not, as Alex explained, simply to promote our own society. We give them rights because we value them as part of our lives and our culture, and we see that need to be protected. And by allowing them to be essentially raped or tortured is morally wrong. This idea that also this idea that came up from the negative side, that or acting side, that would promote sexual happiness and you know, give people a way of expressing themselves sexually. It's a load of nonsense. We obviously explained that, you know, this is only going to affect a small group of society. It's not like people who would normally just use their hand before falling asleep. You're going to go out and think, no, I'd rather go and do the dog instead. You know, it's not something that people are going to think about. And then the effects, just to reiterate again, the moral effects this is going to have on our society. It's obviously going to have, you know, by allowing essentially a form of rape, we have to ask ourselves what it's going to do to the rest of our society, and what is it going to push people towards. Are people allowed to have sex with a dog? Why aren't they allowed to have sex with a mentally ill person who's essentially a vegetable? We give these people rights, we give them rights for a reason, to protect them. And then finally, as Alec reiterated again, the health effects. We don't know what they're going to cause, what side effects these could have. AIDS came from apes, we don't know what other diseases could be out there with animals, and we don't know the effects we could have on the animal population. So that's why we are proud to oppose.
So yeah, leader for the affirmative team.
Yeah.
Tom.
Being supported.
Ladies and gentlemen, the negative team today has had this huge contradiction. At first speaker, they came out and kind of accepted that it's okay to slaughter an animal as long as it's humane, or it's okay to hunt an animal as long as the hunter does a clean kill. But then at second speaker, it's suddenly it's suddenly horrible to keep an animal as a pet, or control an animal in any form, whether it be a pet, whether it be livestock or anything else. So there's a huge contradiction in the way that they've actually laid out their case there to begin with. And the reason for that is because they fundamentally can't prove that animals should not be the property of humans. Their acceptance that animals cannot that animals do not choose who they have sex with, in terms of that animals cannot actually say, like the bull in a paddock, a cow cannot say to that bull, no, I don't want to have sex, the bull will just mount her anyway. Because the cow does not have a choice, they are thereby actually accepting our premise on the affirmative team, that animals in general are inferior to humans. By accepting that animals are inferior to humans, that they actually by default then accept our entire argument, and that animals should not have rights. So, to begin with, I need to kind of disprove this thing that Paul talked about at second speaker, about that actually physically an animal cannot be raped. There is no concept of rape in the animal kingdom. When it comes to mating, mating is just mating. There is almost absolutely no choice in it when it comes to every single species on this earth except for humans. Because rape does not exist, it is impossible for a human to rape it, and as such, that point simply goes into the trash can. If the affirmative team also tried to argue that because under the second speaker's model you can't keep a kitty, you shouldn't be able to to rape it, to have sex with a kitty. But the fact is, we already see fundamentally that people are able to keep pets for personal enjoyment, whether it's for company or whether it's for dressing the kitty up to look like Hello Kitty. whatever it is that turns you on or makes you happy, we accept fundamentally that there are limits to animal rights when it comes to human enjoyment. Animals fundamentally are property, and there's been no response to that except for, well, actually, there shouldn't be. If we go down that line, to be frank, billions of people would die, as talked about by myself at first speak. If we simply said no livestock, no killing of animals for humans' purposes, we would lead to billions of people dying. And this is from the team who claim to represent the so-called humane approach. Because of this, their arguments about the whole intellectually disabled person who can't choose, and so because we can't rape an intellectually disabled person, we shouldn't be able to rape an animal, that's actually false. Because as Paul talked about it second, an intellectually disabled person is still fundamentally a human. And we accept that a human being able to rape a human is bad because it's bad for humanity's reasons, in terms of that humanity just goes into a spiral. But a human raping and having sex with an animal does not go to the same boundaries because an animal is simply just an animal at the end of the day. Animals do not choose when it comes who they have sex with at the end of the day. Because of this, there is no difference between a bull having sex with an animal or a human having sex with an animal. And for that reason, and for the benefits that Paul outlined in his second speaker in terms of an emotional and sexual release, because we all accept fundamentally that sex is good, for those huge, overwhelmingly positive reasons, the moot must stand.
Do you want to go out?
You good?
Cross shaking.
Cheers.
University degree.